Arthur Schopenhauer. What's the first word that pops into your head? For almost everyone, it's pessimist, right? I mean, this guy has a reputation for being the ultimate downer of philosophy, the one who saw everything in the darkest possible light. But what if there's more to it? That's what we're going to dig into. We're going to peel back that gloomy label. And, to be fair, he kind of earned that reputation. Just listen to this idea. He says that pain, that's the real thing. It's the baseline, the default setting for life. And pleasure? Nah, that's not a real positive state. It's just the short little gap when one pain stops right before the next one begins. Yikes. I mean, what a bleak place to start, right? But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the whole reason we're talking about him. Was that brutal diagnosis the final word? Was it all just doom and gloom? Or, and this is the big question, was he actually drawing us a map of the problem so he could show us the way out, maybe even a hopeful way out? Let's see. All right, so first things first, we got to understand his diagnosis of what's wrong with the world. For him, it all boils down to one core concept. He called it the world as will. And you can think of this will as the engine that's driving all the suffering in existence. Now, it's super important to get this straight. When he says the will, he's not talking about your personal willpower, like deciding to go to the gym. Nope. This is something much, much bigger. For Schopenhauer, the will is this fundamental cosmic force. It's a blind or rational energy that's at the heart of everything. And all it does is want and want and want endlessly. There's no goal, no purpose. It's just this constant, nagging, unsatisfied craving that powers the entire universe. And here's how we actually feel that cosmic will in our day-to-day lives. He used this brilliant metaphor of a pendulum. He said our life is just constantly swinging back and forth. On one side, there's the pain of wanting something. That new phone, a better job, whatever. Then what happens when you finally get it? The pendulum swings, and for a split second, you get a little bit of satisfaction, which almost immediately turns into boredom. And then whoosh, the pendulum swings right back to the other side. The pain of a brand new desire. Sound familiar? And listen, this isn't just a human thing. Schopenhauer looked at the natural world and saw the exact same brutal logic at play. He saw the will everywhere as this constant violent war. Everything is trying to devour something else. It's just a non-stop battle for survival, what he called the will to live. It's a pretty grim picture, yeah? He's basically saying that suffering isn't an accident. It's woven into the very fabric of the universe. So how do we deal with this? Well, he actually borrowed a really powerful idea from Hindu philosophy. He said that the world we see every day, with separate objects, separate people like you and me, that's all just Maya. It's a veil of illusion. Think of it like a dream that's hiding the true reality. And what's behind that veil? That one single raging will that connects absolutely everything. Okay, so that's the diagnosis. It's a lot. Pretty bleak stuff. But here's the thing. Schopenhauer didn't just point out the problem and leave us there. He offered solutions, or prescriptions. And the very first one, the easiest way to get a little bit of relief, he said, is through art. Think about it. Have you ever been so completely lost in a song or staring at a painting or just looking at a sunset that everything else just melts away? You forget who you are, what you're worried about, your to-do list. It's all gone. According to Schopenhauer, that is the moment. That's when you've temporarily escaped the tyranny of the will. You stop being this bundle of needs and wants, and for a moment, you become what he called a pure, will-less subject of knowledge. You're just observing. And he had this absolutely beautiful way of describing it. He said that life, driven by the will, is like a raging, chaotic river, just a torrent of struggle and pain. But that moment of aesthetic escape, it's like a rainbow that gently appears over that raging water. It doesn't stop the river, not at all. But for a little while, it gives you this moment of pure, calm beauty, completely separate from the chaos below. But, and this is a huge but, it doesn't last. The rainbow fades, the song ends, your phone buzzes, and bam, you're yanked right back into the river, back into the world of wanting and striving. So, and this is the key takeaway here, art is an amazing, beautiful escape, but it's just a temporary fix. It's not the final answer. So Schopenhauer saw art as just the first step on a much longer path. It's like the gateway drug to peace, you could say. It proves to us that it's actually possible to silence the will, even for a moment. From there, the path gets deeper. It leads through morality and eventually to a state he called holiness. And that brings us to his final liberation, his ultimate solution for a more lasting kind of peace. We're not talking about a temporary fix anymore. This is about completely changing your relationship with the will itself. And the way to do that, he argued, is through compassion. The absolute key to this whole transformation is this one profound insight. And again, he got it from ancient Indian philosophy. The phrase is tat vam asi. It means this thou art, or more simply, you are that. What does that mean? It means realizing that your idea of being a separate individual person is just part of the illusion, part of that veil of Maya we talked about. Once you truly see through that illusion of being separate, you get it. You realize that you're not actually cut off from everyone else. We're all just different expressions of that same single cosmic will. And if that's true, think about what that means. The suffering of another person or another living creature, that suffering isn't over there. In a very real way, it's your suffering too. And that insight is the bedrock of real, genuine compassion. So this deep, compassionate realization is what leads to the ultimate goal, what he called the denial of the will. Now let's be clear, this is not suicide. He was totally against that. It's more like a quiet turning away from the rat race. It's this state of calm resignation, of peace, a kind of willlessness that sounds a whole lot like the Buddhist idea of nirvana. You basically just stop feeding the monster. So here's a great way to look at it. You've got these two totally different ways of being. On one side, there's the default mode, right? The world of the will. That's where you've got endless wanting, constant suffering, and this illusion that you're a separate self. But on the other side, the path of denial, that leads to serene peace, universal compassion, and this profound understanding that everything is connected. And here's where Schopenhauer really flips the script on us. From our normal everyday perspective, full of goals and desires, this state of willlessness just looks like, well, nothing, right? Like an empty void. But he says, get this, for the person who's actually reached that state, our real world, with all its drama, its ambitions, its suns and galaxies, that's the world that's nothing. It's a total radical reversal of what we think is real and important. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a wild idea, but was anyone actually listening to this gloomy German guy? And the answer is a resounding yes. His influence was absolutely massive, and you can still feel it all over the place today. I mean, the list is incredible. Sigmund Freud basically admitted Schopenhauer figured out the death drive before he did. The legendary philosopher Wittgenstein, his early work is full of Schopenhauer. Artists, too. The composer Richard Wagner, the novelist Thomas Mann, they were obsessed with his ideas. And maybe most importantly, he was one of the very first big-time European thinkers to take Eastern philosophy seriously, seeing the deep connections between his own ideas and things like Buddhism and Vedantic thought. So it turns out Schopenhauer's so-called pessimism is way more than that. It's this deep, complex, and honestly, a surprisingly useful guide for living. He gives us a map for navigating a world of suffering by showing us how to find moments of peace and art and a more lasting freedom through compassion. And that leaves me with one final question for you to think about. If Schopenhauer was right, if life really is a raging torrent, where do you find your rainbow?